Uh, let's see. I like to just listen to most of the other questions. Got it. Yeah. So one of the videos that I posted today actually was on like master's degrees. I don't know how. I know that Luke, you're starting your engineering journey, but depends on. Okay, so the whole conversation started with me talking about whether or not engineers need master's degrees. And one of the things that I mentioned was that it's going to be highly dependent on, like, there's just a lot of things to consider, right? Like whether you have the money, whether you have the time, whether it depends on what you want to accomplish long term, like your goals. Uh, there's a lot of engineers that I know that are in industry and who have been in industry for the last like 20, like 30 years, and they just have their bachelor's degree as education, and they're doing very well. Like, I mean, they really love the work that they do. Like, and so there's really no shame with just doing that. But I think the misconception is that sometimes we think that a master's degree is going to make us more money, when in reality it's really going to depend on the field that you're into for sure. Um, and so, and especially if you are trying to get a master's degree on loans, like I will never do that, borrowing money to complete a master's degree, because in reality it's like you may not need it. Now, I want to be very careful here because I don't want to discourage anyone from getting a master's degree. Like, if you have the time, if you have the money, if you know exactly what you want to do, if you want to be an expert on a specific field or specific subject, then most likely a master's degree is going to be beneficial. It's going to make you eligible for certain positions that you may be looking forward to in the future. But I'm referring to the people that are kind of on the fence. They really don't know what to expect, whether or not they're going to need it. If you are someone that is not sure whether you're going to need a master's, and especially if you don't have the money, because I mean, I ran into that scenario in 2012, when I was a senior. I was thinking about getting a master's, but then I didn't really have any funding, which means I would have had to pay for my own master's. And then, so I was kind of like unsure about it. But luckily, I went to work as an engineer, and after actually getting to know the engineering industry for a couple of years, I decided not to get a master's. Like, I was like, I don't need a master's. Like, it's not gonna help me. Like, I'm not someone that wants to go up to like I don't want to be a CEO of a company. I don't want to be a chief technology officer, like all those positions that usually require a master's degree. Now, if you're someone that wants to go up the ladder, and I suggest that you watch one of the videos that I posted today on TikTok. I talk about the two ladders that engineers have, and this is going to vary by company, but generally speaking, you're going to have the technical track going up the ladder on the technical side, and then you're also going to have the business side. When you're talking about the technical side, you're talking about chief engineers, engineering, let's call it like principal engineers and senior engineers. And then when you talk about the business side, you're going to be dealing with engineering directors, engineering managers. You're going to be dealing with maybe like vice president of engineering, or like chief technology officer and things like that. So you're going to have, once you go up the ladder, you're going to have those two branches. Now, if you are focusing on the business side, the higher up you go, most likely a master's is going to be useful. On the engineering side, based on what I've seen, it usually takes a bachelor's degree and lots of years of experience, usually decades. You don't get to the top on the technical side as an engineer. You don't get to be a chief engineer just with a couple of years of experience. You usually have like 10, 20, like maybe sometimes 25. I used to work with the chief engineer, and these guys have like 25, 30 years of experience in the field. So a lot of technical expertise and a lot of technical knowledge. But yeah, so that's basically the gist of it. And the main thing to consider is like, if you have a specific position, like, so let's say you want to be a chief technology officer, right? Like maybe the money is attractive to you, or maybe the work they do is attractive to you. So what I would do in that case, I would do some research on different companies or look up salaries and job requirements for those specific positions. So that way you have an idea whether or not a master's degree is something that can be useful. Because again, it's a tricky situation, and it can be sticky because there's a lot of things that influence the decision on whether or not to do a master's degree. So if you guys have any questions, you can let me know now. You can just write them on the screen, and then I'll answer them. But that's kind of like, I guess, the theme for today: master's degrees and whether or not you should get them as an engineer. But yeah, it really depends on a lot of things, like your field. Let's see. All right, so let's see. Heidi 757 says, what do you think the most important classes are for mechanical engineers? Thinking design, product testing. What kind of design? What kind of design matters, because are we talking about, let's say, like jet engines? Are we talking about compressors? Are you talking about pumps? Are you talking about propulsion in general? Or you want to get into the engineering industry like aerospace? Okay, so product testing. For those classes, for product testing, mechanical design is definitely important. All the classes that teach you about stress and physical properties of components under pressure, or how they behave in certain situations. Physics, for sure. That's a given. For mechanical engineers, anything like physics and math, obviously they're very they're crucial, right? In addition to that, let's see. For product testing, what kind of product are we talking about? Because you have to be a little more specific. Because design is very broad. As a mechanical engineer, you can get into designs of electrical components. You can get into design of, but in general, if you're trying to be general, if you look into design, math, for sure, you need math. Physics, for sure. What else? For product testing, mountain bikes. Okay, that's a little more specific. Okay, that's awesome. That's really good, actually. So for mountain bikes, interesting. I would say definitely physics, right? Physics is one. I would also understand, I think a little bit of a material science, so that way you can understand things at the micro level, different metal compositions and things like that. Maybe a composite, depending on what type of material you're using for mountain bikes. For composites, is there a composites class? I don't know if they offer composites class. Maybe if your school offers something like that. But then product testing is something that you kind of pick up actually on the job. Those are skills that you learn on the job. And the reason I'm saying that is because every company or every design, it's going to have its own, let's say, test procedures. When you're testing something, when you're testing a device, whether it's electrical, mechanical, software, like anything, you're going to follow certain test procedures that you and your team are going to be developing. So the test procedures are going to determine, obviously, like how you need to test something, at what angles, or how much pressure, like how hard you need to hit it, like how high it needs to be dropped. And so in general, for mountain bikes, physics, math, for design. What else? For manufacturing, maybe like some industrial engineering. Because when I took industrial engineering classes, they taught me a little bit on the manufacturing side. So that was my experience. But those are the main things. I mean, design is like, it depends on software too. What part of design? Software depends on what kind of software the company that makes mountain bikes use. Do they use a commercial, or they have their own? Sometimes companies have their own software that engineers learn once they join industry. Any specific questions on that? That's sort of like that's the bottom line, really. A lot of the times, what school gives us a general, a baseline. The school teaches us how to, how to learn, especially as engineers. You learn how to learn, and they give you a basic understanding, a baseline of how things work, what to do, how to come up with solutions, how to come up with solutions to problems. And the specific skills that you need to perform your job, you're actually going to be learning like on the job. Like let's say if you join a mountain bike design company, I mean, they're going to teach you exactly what you need to do. They're going to teach you like what software you need to be using. They're gonna tell you like the steps that you need to follow, the processes. And so school is just gonna give you a very general background. So that's why I'm having a little hard time. I'm trying to make a connection between, okay, well, mountain bikes, you obviously need physics and you need math and stuff like that. But if you want me to be specific, like that's as far as I can go. I'm not sure about the intricacies of the mountain bike industry, and so that's as far as I go. I'm trying to be as general as possible, so that way I'm trying to find a way to approach it. So hopefully that was helpful. Anything else? Any other questions that you guys have? Mountain bikes, that's actually a really cool industry. Do you ride mountain bikes, I'm guessing? Are you one of those X Games type dude or girl? I don't know. Can tell by your handle. Well, whoops. Let's see. Any other questions that you guys have? Caleb, earlier, that's your name. Yeah, so are you into mountain bikes and stuff, Caleb? Let's see. Potato Tomato just joined. Well, thank you for joining. Yeah, I do ride it. That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it also depends on what type of what type of material, like new technology, right? Like new technology is probably like something, I mean, people probably research like better and better. Like for mountain bikes, I know that they need to be light, but at the same time, they need to be really, really strong, right? I remember I had a friend who had a mountain bike, and he, I think it was a carbon fiber bike, and it was pretty expensive. For my standards, it was pretty expensive. I think it cost him like $1,300, but I know some bikes can go up to like $2,000, $3,000 depending on how light they are, how strong they are. Like, so it goes into all of that, and also depends on like what you're focusing on. Now that I'm thinking more about it, you have to break it apart, right? Because you have the tires, you have the brakes, you have like the what else do you have? The shock absorbers. You have, well, if it's a, you gotta educate me here. If it's a carbon fiber bike, is it welded? No, it's not, right? I think like it's like one frame. I believe it's like all one frame. Those expensive bikes, I think they're usually like only just all one frame, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too familiar with mountain bikes. I'm just going by what I know, by what I remember. And so it really depends on specifically on like what you're focusing on. Are you focusing on the structural side? In that case, then if you're focusing on the structural side and testing of that, the frame per se, then AutoCAD is going to be very useful, like FEA, like finite element analysis and stuff like that. So now that I'm actually thinking more about that, if it's tires, there is a mechanical engineering class that deals a lot with tires. The one I took, it was for cars, and it was called vehicle dynamics. That taught me a lot about main car related, right? Like shock absorption. It taught me about tires, mainly related to mountain bikes. So that definitely gives you a little bit more insight, right? Like if you're gonna be focusing on the frame, then obviously, like I just mentioned, doing FEA, structural analysis, statics. That's a good one, right? Because everything is gonna have to be balanced, and also like vibrations, and it's also a mechanical engineering class that may be useful from a mountain bike design perspective, because obviously it's gonna be going through like a lot of like shocks. Yeah. So to recap, for design, computer modeling, we're talking about FEA, we're talking about AutoCAD. from the structural side, we're talking about mechanical design. You're talking about obviously physics, statics, dynamics. Also, I feel like I'm going through the whole curriculum. But you get the idea. Oh, okay, so if it's carbon, yeah, if it's carbon fiber, okay, got it. If it's carbon, onto one piece, got it. Yeah, so as you can see, it's a lot more complicated than I originally thought, and that's why you have to be a little more specific, because when you go out to the field and you start designing cars or bikes, you're gonna be focusing on one specific part. You're not gonna be doing, if you're an engineer in a certain company, you're not gonna be the one that's designing the tires, the one that's designing the structure, the base, the ones that's designing the shock absorbers. You're usually gonna have like an engineer that's focusing on one little part of the bike. So you may be the one that is focusing on the frame, or you may be an engineer that is just focusing on the tires, So unless it's a small company and they just make everything on their own, but most likely I think they probably contract it out and they hire outside people to make certain parts. That's usually like the way it works. For those so let's say, right, for example, to make it simple, I'm not sure how some brands work in the mountain bike industry, but some companies, what they do, so let's say I have a bike company, right? I have my own brand. I have my Alex Isidro mountain bikes. So even though I am the brand, some companies, what I would do is like I would have somebody else make the tires. I would have somebody else make the frame. I would have somebody else make the shock absorber, somebody else make the brakes. And so once I buy all those products from those different companies, then I put it all together, I integrate everything, and then I sell it as my brand. So there's a ton of companies that do that. There's a lot of brands that do that. For example, like one huge example is like in the aerospace industry, we look at Airbus, we look at Boeing. They don't make everything on their own. They have specific companies like make their engines, make their wings, make their fuselage, the landing gear, but then they put everything together in a Boeing or Airbus place, and then they sell it as theirs because it's their brand. So it's the same thing. I'm not sure how. It depends on how large the company is and how many products they have going on. But yeah, you don't get to make everything on your own, basically. If that helps. Oh, okay, got it. Your dream job is to work on frames and your rear suspension geometry. Got it. Oh, that's awesome. I think that it's really good what you have going for you right now. I think it's really good that you already have an idea what you're looking for. So that gives you a goal, basically. And if you go to a specific company, like for example, right, like let's just say Trek is a very famous mountain bike manufacturer, designer. So if you want to work on those systems that you mentioned, I would go in there I would start doing a little bit more research on maybe if they have suppliers, like who makes their frame, who makes the Trek frames, and start looking into how they make them, the manufacturing process, their design process, and see what kind of qualifications the engineers that make those parts have. Sometimes Trek, maybe if you go to careers in the Trek company and they're hiring engineers, maybe they're hiring an engineer that does frames. And so that you can look at the job requirements, the job descriptions, and then get an idea of what kind of software you need to know, what kind of background you need to have. So that way, while you're in college as a mechanical engineer, you can kind of start taking classes that are going to take you that route. And that way, you can increase your chances of getting a job with Trek or any, I'm just giving that as an example, but any other company that is on your target, on your mind, that makes the parts that you talked about, suspension geometry, and the frames. And it says, and you nailed how they work. Right, yeah. Okay, sounds good. So I hope that was helpful. You have any more questions that I can help you answer? I can help you give you my perspective, give you my take on it. So I got 5 more minutes for maybe like 1 or 2 more questions that I can help answer. Thank you everyone for joining, by the way. We got Luke, Caleb, thank you guys. Thank you user 26300533840 ... I appreciate y'all being here. Let's see. Okay, so I just saw your question, Luke. It says, how useful is experience with MATLAB? So it's going to depend, to be honest. Depends on what you want to do. If you're going into design, most likely having a little bit of background with MATLAB is gonna help you for sure. It depends on the industry that you get into. Having a decent understanding of how coding works and how you can use MATLAB for sure is helpful, but you definitely don't need to be an expert. You don't have to be advanced. If you like it and you want to learn more about it and you're proficient with it, for sure, that's a huge plus. But you don't have to be an expert with MATLAB in order to get a job, or it is helpful for sure to have an understanding of how coding works. So yeah, it can be useful, but you don't have to be an expert with it. Let's see, any other questions that I missed? So I did see a message that popped up, but I don't know how long TikTok is gonna take to show it. So just bear with me for a second. I don't know if it's ever gonna show up. I wonder why they do that. Is that like to prevent spam, or I don't know why they, like on Instagram, like when I go live on Instagram, it's fairly quick. Like somebody types something and then it shows up on the screen. But then here on TikTok, you guys probably, if you've been on my lives before, you know that I always rant about that, and I'll keep ranting until they fix it or until it goes away. Let's see. Okay, so it seems like no more questions. So I got 3 more minutes. Let me know. Oh, okay. So with the video that I'll be releasing today on YouTube, if you guys don't know, if you've been up to my lives before, you know that I have a YouTube channel where I elaborate on a lot of the things that I share here on TikTok. So the video that I'm actually editing right now is about how to turn an internship into a full-time position, into a full-time job. And so I'm going to be sharing a couple of tips. I'm mainly divided in 3. My approach has 3 keys to it. Number 1, how to first impressions, right? Like when you have an internship, first impressions do matter. So how to have a solid opening to your internship. And I'm also talking about when you do your job. That's number 2. And then the final stage is obviously having a solid closeout. Like you have to make sure that people remember you somehow, that you have a good relationship with the people that you are working with, especially your supervisor, your mentor, because those are going to be the people that are going to make recommendations on whether or not they should hire you once you graduate. So I go over this in a lot more detail in the video that I'll be posting about 45 minutes or so. So if you guys are interested in that, then you can go check that out. I give you a lot more detail and more tips on that. So that way, when it comes time, when you guys get your internship, if you, of course, this is assuming that you like the company and you want to work with the company, because sometimes like when you have an internship, you realize, this is not what I expected, and it's like that's not what I want to do. So if you get an internship and you actually like the company, you like what they're doing, then I recommend that when that time comes, I recommend that you watch the video now so that you have an idea on what to do, what to expect once you get to that stage when you graduate, and or maybe you have an internship coming up this summer or even next fall. I think it's going to be good for your general knowledge anyway, so I highly suggest that you watch that video. All right, so I'm going to start saying bye. I don't have any more questions and probably got a couple of seconds left. So if you guys, as always, if you guys have any more questions, you can always DM me and I'll get to your question when I see it. I'll be back tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. So if you have any more questions, you can come join. And then my grace period is about 5-10 minutes, depending on how I'm feeling. If no one joins, which is completely cool, no worries, no harm, then I'll go away and come back the next day, 7:30 again, to test the waters and see how guys are doing. So with all that being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 7:30, Friday. And if I don't see you tomorrow, then see you Monday. I'll see you tomorrow though. All right, bye.